there's always another side of the story. Tell me what the other side of the story is, because we've handled just today as a parole board, we've handled some with juveniles and different things where grown men, 30, 40 years old, but with 10-year-olds, and they would get 10, 20 years, that sort of thing. 25 years for first offense distribution or possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute, that seems, I don't want to second guess the judge or anything, but just in globo across all of Louisiana, that seems pretty significant. Why were you given 25 years?
This case is insanity at its finest. She was actually sentenced to 40 years and she got 15 years knocked off on appeal. This was her first felony. She was just a middleman set up in a sting operation and they threw the book at her. We will go over all the details because she has 3 appeals. Thank you, Sir Richard. And the appeals include her PSI report, which goes over her history or nearly lack thereof. Why a judge would sentence her to 25 years for distribution and another 15 years for attempted distribution to run consecutively over the age of 40, basically locking her up for the rest of her life. And when she did not have a clandestine lab. She was not a big time dealer. As a matter of fact, she had a hard time finding the narcotics. Someone came to her and said, "Hey, let me pay you above market price for X, Y, and Z." She went to her dealer and said, "Can you give this to me? Let me sell it to this person." That's all she did. And the judge gave her 25 for the distribution and 15 for the attempted because the second time around, she didn't get to do it. That's when they finally laid the cuffs down on her. This type of stuff just blows my mind. It's not that dissimilar from the case where the man got nearly a life sentence for stealing uh items from a car, right? And with the habitual offender bill. And we see corruption. We see corruption in the judicial system. But what I think is a little wild about this one is that you'd expect this corruption to happen maybe in the 90s during the three strike rule, you're outlaw, or maybe in some prior, day that would, but no, this case happened in 2016. This is recent stuff. You really can't make it up. It's scary. And this is not an habitual offender bill. This is simply a judge throwing the book at someone who said, "I'm not going to take a plea deal. I'm going to go to trial." And like the sheriff stated, what is shocking about this is that we see those who harm children that get put away with nothing, slap on the wrist sentences, but then they go after a mother, they go after a woman who has no prior felonies, who has some misdemeanor charges on her record, and you try to lock her away for life. Make it make sense.
Tanya Sandifer, 741247.
Offense class, your first offense.
Yes, sir.
Offense, attempted distribution of Schedule II methamphetamines. Distribution of Schedule II methamphetamines again. Sentencing date was December 4th, 2018. You were sentenced to 25 years of hard labor. Your parole date is August 29th, 2024. Your good time date is November 29th, 2025. Your full term is February 25, 2043. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. You were distributing drugs, you were selling drugs also?
Actually, that was the very first time that I did, and the last time.
First time that does. I see. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions. Ms. Stapleton, do you have any questions?
I might. I'm gonna let Mr. Prater go first. He's pretty good on these kind of questions.
All right. Mr. Prater?
Okay, I noticed that the sentencing judge mentioned that you've been found, you've been charged or found guilty or violated some kind of rule at the jail, we're introducing contraband or something. Tell me about that.
That was I had a watch, a smart watch, and I wore it into it wasn't connected to a phone. I wore it into the jail, but the charges were rejected.
So it wasn't drugs.
No, sir.
Contraband wasn't drugs.
No, sir.
Okay, what kind of plan do you have to stay away from drugs? I noticed you said you don't have a drug problem anymore, and it's my understanding that once you have a addiction problem, you always have one, and it may have just been the way you said it, but what do you plan to do when you get out to stay on the straight and narrow?
Once you're an addict, it was said wrong. Once you're an addict, you are always a recovering addict, and I will be in recovery for the remainder of my life. However, I do have a strong support system with the ladies at Paul's that I've met through working for the shelter. Also, I have a church that I'm going to join as soon as I am released. Also, I have 2 jobs lined up that I'm going to be working. I'm going to stay busy, and I plan on joining NA or, seeking self-help programs.
There's always another side of the story. Tell me what the other side of the story is, because we've handled just today as a parole board, we've handled some with juveniles and different things where grown men, 30, 40 years old, with 10-year-olds, and they would get 10, 20 years, that sort of thing. 25 years for first offense distribution or possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute, that seems, I don't want to second guess the judge or anything, but just in globo across all of Louisiana, that seems pretty significant. Why were you given 25 years?
That whenever they offered, I had never been in trouble prior to this. So whenever was offered an offer, I didn't know. I was guided to refuse it, that the plea would go down. So it went to trial. And whenever it went to trial, that's when I got the 25.
And how many years have you been in jail since the time you were arrested?
How many years? Approximately 7.
So you served 7 years of a 25-year sentence for possession of meth with intent to distribute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I got.
Stapleton?
No, Mr. Prater covered everything I was thinking.
I was looking too, as I read the report, that, your good time is November 29th, 2025, about another year. I heard your statement about the plan you have if released. So I have no more questions either, and I was puzzled. I'm glad Mr. Prater brought that out. 25 years and you've only done about 7. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right, since I had your case, I'm going to lead out. My vote today is to deny, simply because you've not served enough time, in my opinion, and I think you need to take some more classes in abuse. And the staff there speaks very highly of you, and that's good. I'm really happy about that, but my vote today is to deny. Ms. Stapleton?
Well, I have to say, I'm really torn. I wish they had like a Steve Hoyle for ladies, because that's a wonderful program for situations like this, but they don't. I'm gonna deny, but you only have 1 more year left. That's right, until your good time date.
Yes, ma'am.
Listen, you have every reason to feel good about yourself and every reason to believe, and you're gonna have to work on it. You're going to go to the NA and AA meetings and stuff, but I do wish you every good fortune in the world.
Thank you.
I'm going to deny today, but continue doing what you're doing, so that when you get out of there, this will be a page you're able to turn in a chapter of life. Okay.
Mr. Prater?
Of course, it doesn't make any difference, but my vote would have been to grant. I think that you've based mainly on what the folks that know you best, and that's the ones that you work with down there. And when the warden will stick their neck out, because they don't normally do that, when the warden sticks their neck out and writes a letter like that, and due to the fact that you served almost all of your sentence already, and you've been a model prisoner and done nothing egregious, I would have voted to. So I'm saying all that to tell you it makes no difference because it's got to be unanimous. So you're not going to get out today. But I say all that to encourage you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so that's all I want to do. I would have voted to grant your parole, but hang in there. You're going to be out in a short while anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prater. Today, you've been denied your parole, and I wish you well, and this concludes our business for today.
Thank you.
We're signing out at 1:02.
And to add insult to injury, they deny. And ironically, it's the sheriff, Mr. Prater, who was the sheriff for like his entire lifetime. He's the one that grants. And I do love that about the sheriff, that even though he is in law enforcement, he sees that this is absolutely nuts. Now, you might say, well, look, they like to believe that the judge wouldn't possibly sentence someone barbarically. There must be some reason. You might say that that's why they didn't grant, but there's a few things. One is Mr. Prater, the preacher. If you've been watching this long enough, you would know that he's I'm sorry to say this, in my opinion, an incompetent board member. He should not have been handpicked by the governor. He has no pre-qualifications, and he hasn't improved over time. Then you have Miss Prater, not Miss Prater, Stapleton, the survivor's advocate. She's my favorite parole board member, but for some reason she denied. I like to think that maybe this is something she goes back on and actually regrets, because then you have the sheriff with the common sense that says, what is going on here? We need to grant you. It is insane. This is a woman, and I'll go over the appeal with you and her PSI report. She was picked on. I say like an undercover investigator that had like, I don't know, for whatever reason said, hey, we want to buy a bunch of grams from you, and we'll go over the reports and details. I'll just give you the overview. And she's like, all right, well, I can make some money. Hold on. She calls her dealer. The dealer gave her stuff. She sold it. It wasn't a lot, $600 or something. Then they went for another controlled buy. And they said, okay, we're going to do a little bit more this time. So she said, okay, let me call my dealer. The dealer said, okay, I'm going to deliver it to you. They go arrest the dealer, right? So now she had no one to rat on, because they already got the person higher than her. So that could have had something to do with it. They arrest her for the attempted. The judge gives her, they then say, we'll give you a plea deal of like 7 or 8 years. This being her first felony offense, she's probably like, me, blah, blah, blah. She goes for a jury trial. She loses. The judge gets pissed off and gives her 25 years for the sale and 15 years for the attempted, to run consecutively. So they're going to lock a 40-something-year-old mother up for 40 years. They go through the PSR report, and she has a couple misdemeanors. That's it. For like possession of paraphernalia. This is psychopathic level stuff right here. Psychopathic, psychotic, insane, barbaric. This is happening in America in 2016. They go through the expense of a jury trial and then locking someone up out of I don't, and it's like what we see happen over and over and over and over again with those who harm children. They won't take the expense of a jury trial. And then sometimes when they do the expense of a jury trial and they get a conviction, they don't give sentences like this. This is the hypocrisy. This is everything that's wrong with the system that we see over and over and over and over again. And if you were to, to tell someone this, someone in law enforcement, someone in law and order, they would say, you're lying. You don't understand the case. Maybe this was in the 90s, habitual offender, 3-strike law. You say, no. It's not. Here's the footage. Go take a look at it. This is a vindictive judge. And you know that there had to be 3 appeals. It went through the system on 3 appeals. When they won, when they overturned the 15-year sentence, the state fought back. They wanted this to go to their Supreme Court. Because how dare you take away 15 more years off of that sentence? The amount of money that they poured into locking away a nobody is insane. This should be investigated, in my opinion. This is what is wrong, the definition of everything wrong with our system. Like I said, it's similar to the case of the man who was given a life sentence for breaking into cars. He had three car break-ins that he was busted for over a 10-year period. And after giving him 12 years when he was about to be set free, the DA of that case pulled up his paperwork and only on the 12th year came and gave him an habitual offender to give him a life sentence. It wasn't a sentence handed down at sentencing. No, it was on the 12th year when he was about to get out, a man who broke into cars. All right, let's go over this. After a jury trial, Tanya was convicted of distribution of meth and attempted distribution. The court imposed a consecutive sentence of 25 years and 15 years. And keep in mind, don't say, oh, well, she would have gotten parole. No, because because it was consecutive, her 15 years wouldn't even start until the end of the 25. Okay, the defendant appealed. For the reasons that follow, we affirm the conviction, to vacate the sentence, or remand the trial for instructions. Okay, so here's the facts. Let's go over the facts of these heroic law enforcement officers that really took a villain off the street. And you know what? If you want to say it's not, let's not throw the book at the detectives. You know, maybe they were doing the right thing, right? Because they did get the dealer over her, and I'm sure they got that dealer to squeal, which got the person with the lab, and they probably had no idea that she would then have to spend 40 years in prison. So let me preface that this mistake happens with the judge, and I even see the DA. There was no, they didn't have to prosecute this like this. They did not have to give a hardball deal that they gave to her. Okay. The offenses were committed on May 10th, 2016. The Sheriff's Office of Louisiana and State Police Department were investigating narcotics crimes when Durbin was employed by the police as a confidential informant to confect the narcotics between Sanford and an undercover LSP officer, Sergeant William Moore. On May 10th, 2016, Sergeant Moore was working undercover using the alias Luke. I am your father. Sorry. When he met Senator Durbin and Misty Holmes, it's actually interesting. I got a voice changer thing. I got this, finally bought this thing. So here, I'll do. Now I got that out of the way. And Senator entered the passenger side of Luke's vehicle. Senator told the undercover officer 1 ounce, approximately a $700. Wow, she's hardcore, $700, and that's with the markup, mind you, right? She's the middleman. The lab from the the methamphetamine from the purchase was transferred to North Louisiana Crime Lab. There, Senator and Luke exchanged cell phone numbers and texted one another over the next few days. Through a text message, Luke requested another narcotics buy in the amount of 4 ounces of methamphetamine. Senator checked with the supplier and informed the undercover agents that the price would be $2,450. Let's see what her markup was. I mean, I doubt I'll ever be able to figure out with inflation, but let's just do a Google search. Hold on. So there is like a website that I just checked out that actually tells you the street value in not only the state, but like the parishes. But my math is not good there. They break it up in like pounds and grams. So I don't know. I'm sure her markup is not that much. But maybe she's making $500. I'm just guessing. Like who knows? Anyways, he agreed to the price, and the two agreed to meet at Gum Springs on May 16, 2016, to complete the transaction. Now, remind you again, this is someone who went to a woman who's not in the business of dealing and just saying, "Hey, can you get me some?" Oh, who's anyone living in this world would say sure. Due to the risk associated with large narcotic deals, the officers and the LSP case agent in charge of the operation decided to intercept the narcotics before they were delivered. And that's why she got the attempted. Okay. On May 16th, and I love their excuse on risks. Or how about maybe that's what they were doing to catch the big dealer? That's what I would assume. But anyways, on May 16, 2016, Ramonta Jackson Sandifer, alleged supplier, was apprehended by a state trooper while Jackson was en route to meet Sandifer. Some 4 ounces of substance was recovered from Jackson's vehicle and later tested positive. Luke Sergeant Moore, Sandifer met on May 16, 2016 as scheduled, but Sandifer informed him that her supplier had been stopped by state trooper. Sandifer attempted to find a second supplier. And here's again more proof to how she's not in the game. She says, my supplier was stopped. I'm going to find a second one, but was unable to. She is so low level. She is so irrelevant, insignificant, that she could not even find one other person that can help get her stuff. Is that not all the proof you needed? They are pathetic. They piss me off. 3 months later, they wait and they arrest her. 3 months later. She can't come up with anything for 3 months. She's a nobody. August 10, 2016. At trial, Sandifer testified that Durbin was living with her and that it was his idea to sell the narcotics. And in fact, it was Durbin who introduced her to the undercover officer she knew as Luke. The jury unanimously found Sandifer guilty of distribution, and by an 11-1 vote, she did not even a unanimous jury, found her guilty of attempted distribution. On February 19, 2019, Sandifer appeared for sentencing. The court stated that it would review the sentencing guidelines and concluded it should impose a sentence of imprisonment. Listen to this. Because any other sentence would not adequately reflect the seriousness of this offense. The court stated that the illegal narcotics are the source of most of the evil that occurs in the world. Really? Yeah, okay. It noted, and even if it is, it's not the point. It noted that the destructive effects of narcotics have on individual lives and families, and narcotics used to tear the fabric of society. The court also opined that distribution of narcotics is far more egregious offense than mere possession, and in this case, the defendant was convicted of distribution, attempted distribution, large quantities of finding no mitigating fact. No mitigating factors, really. Concluded that the facts of this case warrant substantial terms of imprisonment. Accordingly, the court sentenced her to 25 years of hard labor for distribution, and 15 years of labor for attempted distribution. The court ordered the sentences to be run consecutively because, of course, it wouldn't be enough to have them run concurrently. No. 25 years is enough. Let's do 40 years. She filed a motion to reconsider. Now, here's the discussion where they talk about it being excessive. They say it failed to consider that the role that her I guess the person she lived with wanted to sell it. Blah, 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 blah. And she ends up winning the appeal. So they knock 15 years off. But let's go to the PSI. Watch this. Because some of you who are skeptical will say, no, she's probably has a long record. No judge would possibly do something that is unethical or evil. I mean, I'm using these words, evil. This is how I feel about it. The PSI shows it's not just evil towards her, it's evil to the entire system. The taxpayers, her children, everybody. Yes, she should have gotten locked up. Yes, she should have served time. But this is insane. And I might even argue that she shouldn't have served time because you could also get away with a suspended sentence for this type of scenario. I would argue that, and let her fail parole or probation. Sorry. All right. Anyways, the PSI shows that a misdemeanor charge of so she had a misdemeanor charge of DV that was dismissed in 2009, and that's just one. And very easily, what happens in these cases is that she calls the police on him for DV, and the cops come and they see that they both have bruises and they arrest both of them. This is not an habitual thing. This does not mean, in my opinion, this does not paint her a picture of who she is. And who on meth wouldn't get that anyways? All right, anyways. Misdemeanor charges. Then she has misdemeanor charges of criminal trespass to possession of paraphernalia. charges were pending, so they weren't even convicted. And additionally, the PSR reports an arrest made on July 8, 2017 for possession of Schedule 2 after her arrest on the instant offenses. So that's it. That's it. That's her PSI report. That's it. No DUIs. No robberies. No. I mean, maybe the criminal trespass are like, but that's it. According to the transcripts of several pretrial plea hearings, the state apparently offered her a plea agreement where it would file no habitual offender bill. You couldn't file an habitual offender bill anyways. Habitual offender bill, you need 3 felonies over 10 years and possibly offered a sentence of 9 years. And that's why she went to trial. 9 years is brutal for this. Yeah, you would have argued she should have taken it. And she should have, obviously. You don't want to go to trial against, but Sandifer rejected all the state plea offers and instead chose to go to trial. And the DA's egos got the best of them. And this is, again, I will point to this case, and any of you watching this, whenever the DA states that we don't want to go to trial, the cost and this for child stuff, for children, just bring up this case. Remember, they do. When their egos get involved, they will go to trial. At trial, Sandifer testified that she had lived with Raymond, the confidential informant who set up the narcotics deal. And it's even so muddied. She lived with the guy who was the confidential informant. How low level is this? How low is this? They set up a confidential informant who then sets up the woman she's living with. This is why I thought a trial. Maybe this is why she thought she could win a trial. It's so dirty. She said that her electricity bill had been shut off and she cannot afford the required deposit to turn it back on. She knew that Durbin had engaged in narcotics activity in the past and was not surprised when he suggested introducing her to his friends involved in narcotics to raise money. The friend to whom she was introduced was a man named Luke, who was unknown to her, was actually a police officer undercover. Sandifer testified that Durbin insisted that she actually execute the transaction because she needed the experience in case Luke might need something, more narcotics, while he was not available at work. This is such a setup. She admitted that she did the actual transactions, but insisted that Durbin was the person setting up the deals. Of course, the jury found Sandifer guilty as charged. Now, in 2016, the sentencing range for distribution Schedule 2 was a minimum of 2 years, but not more than 30. The judge could have sentenced her to 2 years. Imprisonment, hard labor, blah, blah, blah. At sentencing, the court disagreed with Sandifer's characterization of herself as a kind, naive surrogate middleman to the narcotics transaction carrying out the deal for Durbin. Contrary to Sandifer's account, the court viewed the evidence showing that Sandifer was not a rookie narcotics dealer and these transactions were not Sandifer's first rodeo, as she had claimed. The court vigorously expressed its view that illegal narcotics are a scourge. They're wrong. Where did they have proof they're wrong? The court said that it viewed narcotic deals more culpable than narcotic users and sentenced. I believe for 100% that it was the first and last time. I sentenced Sandifer to near maximum 25 years for distribution of 1 ounce of meth and imposed maximum sentencing 15 for attempted distribution of 4 ounces. Making a total term imprisonment of 40 years, tantamount to a life sentence for a 41-year-old defendant. In this case, Sandifer was a first felony offender, and while she perhaps served as a middleman in the distribution scheme, she clearly knew that she was doing to make money. She sold approximately 28 grams, and subsequently attempted to sell 113 grams. On review, we conclude the sentences imposed by the courts are indeed very severe, particularly in a view of legislation intent to lessen the penalties for certain narcotic crimes enacting by 2017. So they found that it was absurd, but all they did was reduce it. 20 years instead of 30, and thus reduce the maximum sentence distribution to 10 years instead of 15. However, even Sandifer was sentenced after the amendment was in effect for offenses committed after 2017. The court applied a 2016 version of the statute where the offenses was committed. It was therefore within the court discretion to impose a near maximum sentence of 25 years. Maximum 15. We consider blah, 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 who at age 41, blah, 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 blah. You guys, I think you get the point. And here's the conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, we affirm that the conviction of the defendant However, we conclude the record does not support the imposition of consecutive sentences in this case. Therefore, we vacate the sentence. And then they came back, and there are more appeals on this because the state didn't want to, my understanding, didn't want to give in, but I'll put those links in the description. Thank you, Sir Richard, for this. Often I don't do a 20-minute unpacking for an 11-minute hearing, but this case really triggers me, and I think it would trigger you as well. And then the insult to injury that they denied her parole. She is still locked up at the time of this hearing, which took place on 8/29/2024. So why they would lock her up? She has a perfect criminal prison record. She does everything she needs to do. The warden speaks outstanding of her. Let her go home. But the parole board members, not the sheriff, the other two, in my opinion, made a grave mistake. And with that, I'll let you go.
There's always another side of the story. Tell me what the other side of the story is, because we've handled just today as a parole board, we've handled some with juveniles and different things where grown men, 30, 40 years old, with 10-year-olds, and they would get 10, 20 years, that sort of thing. 25 years for first offense, distribution or possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute, that seems, I don't want to second guess the judge or anything, but just in globo across all of Louisiana, that seems pretty significant. Why were you given 25 years?